Hello, everyone. Hi, I am Dr. Catherine Bulkey. I am the chair of the Delavan, Delavan Lake Committee, and I am a town supervisor. My co-chair, Mary Nipper, is my thank you so much, those of you attending online and those of you attending in person. We did have a little switch up. Our speaker is now going to be online too, since the mask order and COVID numbers, they felt more comfortable presenting virtually. So about a year ago, the Lake Committee, we commissioned University of Wisconsin-Whitewater to update their study on what is the value of a clean and healthy Delavan Lake. The last one was done in 2005, and we feel the lake is even more valuable now. So we are hoping that this is what you also found, Choten and Russ. So I will turn it over to you guys if you want to do your introductions and get going.
That sounds good. This is Chotan Basu from University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. So Russ and I are colleagues, and Russ is the director of the program. So I'm actually going to have Russ do a quick introduction first, and then talk a little bit about the center that he's run for a while. Russ, why don't you go ahead?
Good morning. Thank you for introducing me. Basically, the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, we have the Fiscal and Economic Research Center, which has existed for going on 20 years. During this 20-year period, we've done about 150 studies, a third of them water-related. Water is a huge resource in Wisconsin. We had a long discussion yesterday about it, about how we were talking with UW-Superior about the tourism they have in Superior in the winter to see the ice caves. And that, you know, when we look at Wisconsin tourism, it's not simply limited to the lakes in the summer, but it's year round, and people love their lakes and they love the properties they've invested in. And they want to visit them. The challenge is that if the lakes are not of high quality, those are the lakes that are not fully utilized. And so what we've done over the years, and we've done this on a number of lakes that have challenges, is we've surveyed the non-resident lake owners, or people who don't live on the lake in Delavan year round, and basically asked them how much more time would they spend if the lake was cleaner, in many cases deeper, easier to navigate, and then extrapolate from that how much more that they would spend on the economy. How much more often would they go to restaurants when they're in town, go to the grocery stores to buy provisions, go to the gas stations, to spend more time at their lake property if the lake were of higher quality. We find that people get frustrated. They have an asset they don't fully use. And this is the goal of polishing the apple. How do we polish the apple to make people value that apple even more and want to use it more? Done a lot of this over the years, and I think I believe strongly in it. I believe that it's whether it be the university and the image we portray when the students come to campus, we want to make sure it's clean, that it's safe, that it's presentable, and that it's top quality. And it's the same with any business, whether it be a restaurant or a warehouse. When people come through, they want to see the best, and then they're willing to come back more often. And so that's the starting point of this study. How much more are people interested in using the lake if the water quality is improved? And we go back to the literature, and the literature strongly supports it. I always tell the one kind of silly story, and it's true from that there was a lake, and Boyle did this study in which it was invaded by an invasive species, and the invasive species basically cleared out the lake. It was basically a dead lake, but you could see from the top to the bottom. That was the other side of the coin. The perception was this was an amazingly clean lake, but it actually was not a clean lake because an invasive species had eaten basically all of the life out of the lake. And so there's a sweet spot in there. You don't necessarily want to have zebra mussels throughout your lake destroying the ecosystem, but you want it clean. You want it navigable. And in many cases, you don't want it to have odors. And so that's where we start. And that's where Chotan's going to move on to. And I'm going to have my coffee.
Thanks, Russ. So I just want to mention two things before I launch into the presentation itself. I first want to thank Catherine and everybody on the team there in Delavan. You've been absolutely incredible in terms of working with us, responsive. Anytime we send an email, we get a response back in within the hour. And you've been able to get us all the data and everything. So really appreciate working on this project and all your friendship and professional kind of attitude towards us and our students who worked on this project. So we really appreciate that. The second thing which I wanted to say, just to build on what Russ said, is that one of the things we are noticing with all the projects we are doing right now, particularly with this unfortunate pandemic that's going on, these resources are really important. Lakes, trails, they're driving a lot of tourism and traffic. So keep that in mind. And every time you drive by your lake or walk by your lake, understand and appreciate what you have there as this resource that Russ was talking about. So the format of the presentation today, what I'm going to do is I've got about 14 or 15 slides, which have all kinds of data in them. It'll be difficult for you to just kind of, as I go through, to understand all of it. So here's the format. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go through each of the slides carefully, and then I'm going to go back and then let Russ talk through the impact of each of the slides and what that means. And at that time, we'll stop at each slide and you can ask us questions, or if there's one particular slide you want us to go back to. So I think it's probably just easy if I kind of go through it, especially we are presenting over Zoom, and then we can come back and talk about any part of it that is of interest to you, and Russ can provide the insights. Russ, that format also works for you, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So with that, let me just go ahead and get started. So like Russ said, when we sat down and kind of planned out the study in the beginning, the key thing that we were trying to look at is what is the value of a clean and healthy Delavan lake. And as Russ defined, there could be, two sides of the coin, how you define that. But most of us understand that, what we mean by a clean lake and something that, is a healthy lake that people want to come and use and spend their time. And some of the pieces that we basically, worked with there is that when we were trying to work on the study, the project goals were that we would do a survey, and the survey involved that we would try to survey certain events in Delavan, try to reach the vacation homeowners who live on or near the lake, and other visitors and customers coming to the Lake Delavan area. And then, of course, the core part of the question was how the quality and the cleanliness of the lake impacts their decision. This idea that Russ was saying, could we get them to come and spend one more extra day in the Lake Delavan area? What about 2 extra days? If we could get them to do that, then as they come in and spend the money, it has an economic impact of that spend in your communities. So we are trying to kind of really home into that. And as we were discussing this, one of the interesting ideas that came up between our team and the team from Delavan was to look at the home turnover around the lake. That if people are, selling their properties and leaving, are they leaving because of the lake and how clean it is, or how much of that is a factor? So we tried to take that into account and work through that. So that was kind of the overall concept when we started. And from there, basically, we came up with a way to collect the data. It ended up being quite a few different surveys. And so we first designed a survey which was for what we call the visitor or part-time resident survey. So these were people who were coming in to the Lake Delavan area because they have either property or something very close to the lake to enjoy the lake. They were primarily, that's what was driving them. And they could be coming from other parts of Wisconsin, Illinois, or maybe one of the other states, but particularly those two areas. We also designed a survey to talk to the businesses in the area to kind of try to get some information. One thing I'll mention here for those of you who are attending, I don't know all your profiles, but one of the things we have been very successful in other places when we have done studies is to talk to the local businesses about the zip codes of the people coming to their businesses. And if we can collect those zip codes, that gives us a pretty good idea based on timing and based on where they're coming from to really analyze some of the data. So keep that in mind as you move towards the future, that is something, if every business, every touch point, as we call it, is gathering that kind of information, it can really help you understand, where people are coming from and then advertise accordingly. The other one that we did, and we got a pretty decent response, is the boat pass holders. We did a survey of everybody who had boat passes. And again, Catherine and the team there was magical in terms of sending us the information we needed to kind of do that. And we've kept all this confidential, of course. We are only using it for this study and we're not using it for anything beyond that. And then, like I said, we also tried to survey the people who sold their houses and contacted them. We finally ended up with, your recent fireworks that you had. During the fireworks, we collected data, and we'll be telling you something about some of that stuff, some of the data from that. We did try to get some data on the Airbnb and other places like that. There was not a lot of data points, so we kind of, put that aside, but we had data from all these different surveys. And like I said, we can come back later on and talk about any of them for your interest. We also did some secondary research, so that's based on data that we find, in the public domain or making calls to economic development people. And Russ has tremendous contacts with that, and Catherine has tremendous contacts with those kind of people. We talked to them and collected data. We interviewed certain people. And this one thing on the bottom right-hand corner that you see that I've typed there called Implan, IMPLAN, that is the tool that we use a lot for some of the data that we'll be talking about today. It allows us to take the spend pattern of visitors. If we have the data of what the visitors are spending their money on when they're in a particular location, and we can input that into this software, and it's a global software. We can do this for Australia, we can do it for England, we can do it for India. We can take that data and punch it in, and it projects what is the economic impact, how many jobs are created, and things like that. And that's one of the tools that Russ is an expert in, and we're happy to talk about that some more when we come back and take the questions. So that was the project method. This is, I apologize, this is a slightly busy slide, but people want to know these kind of numbers, so we put it up there. We did multiple mailings or multiple waves of the surveys. We just keep going. I mean, people who do research, they'll tell you, in terms of rigor and non-response bias. And of course, when we are doing studies based on those kind of conditions, we know how to do that. But our goal here is to try to maximize as many responses as we can to try to get some insight on what's going on around Lake Delavan. So what we did is we did several waves with the visitor, the part-time resident surveys. We got about 313 responses on that. For the business, we sent out 113, got back 32. The reason I show you both those data is that's a solid response. I mean, that's a very high response rate. Most surveys, I can tell you, that are done nationally or regionally, people are lucky to get 4 to 5% response. And over here, we're bordering pretty close to 28 to 30% response, which is incredible. And hats off to the businesses in the area and how much they care about their community. So that's awesome. And then for the boat pass holders, as you can see, we got 84 usable responses. And again, it was a really good response. There was a little bit of tricky thing with the boat types. Apparently, there were people who were very picky about, what kind of boat type they had, and we were able to kind of look beyond that and still kind of analyze that data. The house sold, I think we did about 3 or 4 waves. We really tried to find the people who had sold their houses. We're able to get 20 responses on that one. And then the recent fireworks you had, we got about 74 responses. A very unique thing that we did on the fireworks is that we used iPads. I think we had 7 or 8 iPads loaded with the survey. And I think, again, Catherine had organized a bunch of people who were able to walk around and collect the data using the iPads. And the nice thing about that is we're able to see the data come in right away and see where that data is going. So we use that for bigger events like the Irish festival event in Milwaukee. We use the same kind of things. All the other ones were paper surveys, and we also sent people the links for online response for people who wanted to use the online to collect the data. So we went through this whole process. Of course, with the pandemic, everything kind of got thrown a little bit because we didn't have access to our students working around the clock. But we are where we are right now, and we're happy with all the data that has come in. So with that, let me jump into kind of some of the findings. So the overall finding in terms of the lake and talking to the part-time residents, when we took the data that we collected from them and their spending pattern per day and stuff and everything, the economic impact that we see is about 2.55 million. And that roughly translates to 31 total full-time jobs. And then total wages, you can see up there, is about $818,000. And that translates to $151,000 worth of state and local taxes. I mean, obviously you can see the value of the lake right away in terms of the jobs it's creating, the state and local taxes, and of course the economic impact. I'm going to stop there for a second and just check in with Russ. Russ, anything you want to add here at this point?
No.
Okay. So the other thing which we did in the same survey is we tried to figure out that if the lake was cleaner and healthier and so on, the same people that we talked to earlier with the part-time owners and stuff, will they be willing to spend extra time here in Delavan and obviously, again, bring their dollars to the community? And the answer was yes. We did find out that they wanted to do that. And that extra days that they were planning to stay, again, translated to an economic impact of close to $1 million, $818,000 Again, 10 new jobs, 10 full-time jobs, total wages of $269,000, again, translating to about $47,000 in state and local taxes. So right away, you see the value that if you have a clean, healthy lake and so on, people do want to spend more time in your community, which has immediately an economic impact on in the region and the community. So that was from that first survey. And again, we'll come back and talk about this later on if need be. Then we talked to the people in terms of why I sold my house on Lake Delavan. We didn't have too many people say that they left because the lake was dirty or it was not clean enough and things like that. What it turned out is most of the time people were selling because of age and health issues. A lot of it was financial. They had financial reasons to sell it. And in other cases, they were relocating. We did track to see where the surveys were coming back from because we tried to track the owners back to where they have moved to. And we noticed that some of the responses came from Illinois, from as far away as Florida, Tennessee, and Maryland. Those are some of the ones we saw. One of the things we tried to ask the people who had sold their houses is, how important was the healthy lake to you? And they all agreed that it is extremely important to have a healthy lake and a clean lake. One of the other things we asked them is when they did move, did they relocate near water? And 3 of them out of the 20 said that they had, either it was a river or a lake. So clearly they liked the water and that's what they had done. Keep in mind, a lot of the stuff was driven as financial. From the businesses, that the responses we got, pretty straightforward, and most of you who live in the region know this, that most visitors are in summer and then fewer in fall and spring. And most of the visitors come from Wisconsin and Illinois. I'll show you a couple of findings here that they gave us. Some of them are pretty straightforward, but just thought we'll share them with you. 56% of the business owners felt or indicated that the improved water quality will impact their business. And so this is kind of what it looks like. I mean, it's a simple, binary thing here is that, yes, 56% of the businesses felt it impacts them and 44% said no, it did not. And then we also asked them to rate the quality of the Delavan Lake, and wasn't too bad. So the average was about 5.71 out of a scale there, as you can see. But the overall, what we ended up finding out is that there are businesses who feel that the quality of the lake impacts them, which is 56%. So that is important to the businesses in the area. The boat pass holders is important because these are people who use the lake quite extensively. In fact, the average use that we found out was 40 days in the year that most of the, like on an average, that people were using. So these boat pass owners are using the lake quite extensively. Most of them do come, again, from Wisconsin, 62%, but a pretty high number, 35%, come from Illinois. Most of them were, the people from Wisconsin were from the Walworth County. And I'll show you a slide on this that most of them are, are using it for fishing, but we'll show it to you for the entire 84 responses in just a minute. What I did want to mention is that we did ask them that when you're not at Lake Delavan, where are you? And they said that they go to Lake Geneva or the Madison chain of lakes that they spend their time on. So that's kind of your competition, if you will, that if the lake in Delavan is, not as appealing, they will go to Lake Geneva or Madison to do their mostly fishing. We did find a few comments that people felt that the water quality had declined. It was not statistically significant, but it was mentioned. They were using words like murky or mucky, that things had kind of grown. So that's something that we should note. 2 interesting things here. They said their number 1 complaint was rude behavior or poor mannerisms of people on the lake. So other people on the lake who were using the lake, that was their number one complaint. And then the second complaint they had was about the water quality. So we asked them to rate different things, and that's kind of the ones that came to the top. So this is from the boat pass holders. As you can see, I think we ended up with like 4 different categories. So overall, 52% of the people in the group that responded were using it for fishing, which is extremely important. So keep that in mind as you think about the lake. And then in terms of the perceived water quality, 40% said they would use the lake more often, which is what we like to hear, if water quality is improved. So if you continue to keep, making the water quality better, they will want to use it more. They will come here and again, bring their economic, impact and dollars to the community. So that's really important. And of course, most of the boat pass holders will also be working with the businesses in your area. This is the data, just a quick slide from the fireworks event. We've got more data on this. This is just a quick kind of blurb on it. We got about 74 responses. The biggest thing I want to point out to you here is that your fireworks event this year, there were 44% of the people who came there were first-time visitors. That's an incredible number. So I can't explain it. Russ may have some thoughts on this, or somebody else might on the call here. Is that whenever you get these first-time visitors coming to your area, that's great because they get to see your lake, they get to see your community, and hopefully they come back. So I have some data there. I'm not going to go through each of them, but the most important thing that I think our takeaway was the fact that your fireworks event drew first-time visitors to the area, which is very, very big. And people said that fireworks in the atmosphere was something they rated very high. They really liked, the area. And we again asked them about their spending and so on. And based on that, we also calculated some economic impact there based on the 74 data point. And that's again close to $500,000. And translating to about $200,000 in labor income. So very successful event. And I don't know if you benchmark your events, but I would start doing that and kind of building off the data we have from this time. So then what we did is there were a couple of other ones that we used secondary data, the lake lawn expansion that is taking place. Roughly based on some of the assumptions and projections, we think it's going to make an annual economic impact of close to $1 million. Again, you see about that implant, that software tells us that translates to about 12 total jobs in the area and about $345,000 in total wages, translating to about $64,000 in state and local taxes. And then we did the same thing with looking at the proportion of the Lake Geneva economy and vis-a-vis the Lake Delavan. And that's about a 2.66 million annual economic impact. And again, 32 total jobs. And you can see getting up there almost close to $1 million in total wages, 853,000. We did the same thing with all the communities that are right around the lake and are impacted. So we did this with Elkhorn, which again, the proportionately $5.9 million in annual economic impact, the contribution is, again, translating to 71 total jobs, 1.9 million, close to $2 million of total wages, and you see the taxes there. And we'll come back to each of these if there is interest. So I'm just working through this so I can turn it over to Russ. And then the last one was for the entire Walworth County with respect to the lake again. And you can see that's about $11.1 million annual economic impact. And if people have interest in understanding how Implan works, you can ask Russ when he takes over here in a minute. And that's kind of where we are with that data. So I'll now turn it over to Russ. Any overall findings, his thoughts, recommendations. I know he's already talked to Catherine about some of his things, but it'd be nice to kind of, with so many people attending, to kind of have him talk through this. So I'll turn it back to Russ, and I'll stop sharing the screen for a while, but I can bring it back to any slides as needed. Russ, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm going to first ask, before I start to talk, we've gone for a half an hour, and I don't want to basically time everyone out. Did anyone want to ask any questions? Because I can monopolize very easily.
They just asked if you can turn the heat up, Russ.
Can you turn the heat up?
No, can you do that?
Yeah, I can do that. I thank everyone for coming. If you have any questions, just pop in, please. You're not going to disturb me. The one thing I wanted to mention, and this has to do with the Clean Lake, and it has to do with the theory. Over the last few months, I've talked to a lot of business people. I'm in business myself. And one of the things that we've learned in the last few months, and I'm talking to car dealerships, I've been talking to furniture store owners, I've been talking to all kinds of businesses. And they said, we're in an economy today of buyers, not shoppers. You wouldn't believe the number of car dealers I talk to who are selling cars over the phone. People don't want to come down. They don't want to walk around. They don't want to breathe on people, I guess. I'm not sure about that. But they're buyers. They're not shoppers. You get one chance to make the sale. And that's with the lake. We get one chance to make that sale. And so we have to sell the best product the first time and not hope that we can get a second shot at the customer. And the customer for the lake properties is two groups. It's those people who live on it 365 days a year, or maybe they're snowbirds and they live on it 180 days a year. And then there are people who come up on weekends. One of the things we found, and the way we did this, I can give you the secret sauce, is it was binary. There was a group of people who would never come up more, probably because they're coming up a lot to begin with. And about half said they'd like to come up a lot more. And this was highly correlated with their response on the quality of the lake. If you're parsing through the data and you're saying, why aren't they coming up? It keeps coming. We're linking, I want to come up more. I have questions about the quality of the lake. And we link these together. And that's the incremental sale. You get one chance. They come up in August, they see algae blooms, whatever the lake quality issues are. It's a challenge. And so I had my notes here.
Hey, Russ,
Yes, please.
Russ, while you're looking at that, you're saying improved water quality.
Yes.
How much improved? Because when you look at water quality, it just doesn't go yes or no. It's an incremental thing. Is there any idea of how much improved water quality you would need?
No. And one of the reasons is we know about, and I'm going to mispronounce the word, the Secchi depth, where you stand there with a mirror in the water. People's perception of water quality quite often is binary. They like it or they don't like it. They're not chemists. And so they know what they don't like. They know the challenges they have. So the answer to your question is no, directly. I had a couple other observations. I wanted to mention something about the lake lawn because someone asked me the other day about the lake lawn expansion and the taxes generated. And we don't need to go back to that slide. I'm getting. Yes, that's the what's the quest? The lake lawn expansion. The expectation is that the property tax revenue raised off of that is going to pay off the TIF district. In a normal analysis, we would say that the expansion will produce this real estate tax benefit to the region or the community that'll filter its way back through. In that case, it does filter its way back through in terms of capital improvements, but we pulled that out of the data. So that's $67,000. Someone asked me that. The boat pass survey was probably, in my opinion, one of the most, just for me, it was one of the most fascinating, because you had people of passion. You had people calling me on my cell phone, just passionate about fishing, about these day passes that they were buying, and about how they were looking for more. And one of the observations that I had as I spoke with them, and I'll just pass this along anecdotally, is they're fisher. They like to fish. They don't like speedboats. They don't like wake. They're looking for fishing events, fishing opportunities that would be unique, and they were looking for more. And so that was probably the most passionate of the group. The people who sold their houses, as Chotan said, there wasn't a lot of I sold the house because I didn't like the lake. They sold the house because it was time to sell the house. They were retiring. They were looking to downsize. They were looking to relocate. So that wasn't a problem. They weren't abandoning the properties because of it. It circles back to, were they using it enough? Were they getting the value out of it? I wanted to look at the other one was.
And Russ, I have 2 questions when you're ready.
Yes, I'm getting texted by you guys. This is really nice. I like this. What do we have?
So how much in property taxes is paid by part-time residents for the Delavan Darien Public Schools, i.e. the people who pay taxes but don't use the service?
Chotan, do you have that on the PowerPoint slide?
I don't think we do on the PowerPoint slides. I'm sure we can find it, but let me do this. Russ, let me put the PowerPoint slides back up, and I see a note there from our students, and that might help us. Here, give me 1 second.
Next question. As we dig for that one, let's get to work.
While we wait for that question, there's a question from the audience. You had the economic impact to the city of Delavan. Do you have a slide on the economic impact to the town of Delavan?
The challenge in the town of Delavan is the way we looked at this economic impact was the spend that comes out of it goes into the local businesses. And we went through the BLS data and WDC data and other databases that we have access to, and said, what is the proportion of the Walworth County economy that these communities contain? I mean, for example, I have it here somewhere. The number of people who live in Whitewater, Wisconsin, obviously is the largest in the county. It's like 11,000 as a population. But that's not where we're assuming that the people are traveling to go out to dinner or to buy product. On the other hand, the town of Delavan doesn't have the quantity of businesses that service the needs. It's more rural, more residential if you go that way. And so the impact of the lake in terms of spend, the lake is contained, we know the lake is contained in the town of Delavan, predominantly. The businesses that benefit from the lake are located in other communities because that's where the businesses are. That's where the business district is. And so the impact in terms of the in-plan analysis to spend is less in Delavan, where the lake is town of Delavan, than it is in the city of Delavan. And I'm gonna ask, well, I don't have the note in front of me, but what percentage of the lake is located in the city of Delavan?
This is, if we talk about frontage, it's about 10%. 11%. It's this beautiful resort we're next to.
It's the smaller part. And, you know, once again, you know, the lake lawn development, if there wasn't a TIF, that would benefit the schools. But until the TIF expenses are paid off, it's going to be based on the baseline value of the property today.
Right, but when we're talking about
Right.
the value of a clean and healthy lake, there's all these part-time residents, and we're trying to get them to spend more days up here.
Correct.
Spend more days, their property becomes more valuable, and as that happens, more money goes to the public schools, but they don't need the public schools. So I know this is something specifically we asked to be included in this study.
Yeah, I got that came over a little bit garbled. I apologize. I caught words that it was about part-time residents in the schools.
So Russ, I'm just going to jump in here quickly.
Oh, please.
These are the two slides. One is that, the part-time resident stuff. I see a note here from the students on the state and local taxes. You see at the bottom there, it says the estimated state and local taxes generated through the temporary residents of Delavan Lake help contribute towards the local school district, which they do not utilize. So that tax number there, is that what?
Well, there's not going to be local. There's not going to be for the extra days part-time residents stay at their property. That the taxes they're paying in terms of property taxes is embedded already in the existence of the property. They're staying there more doesn't cause them to pay more in property taxes.
Correct.
Correct. That wasn't the point. What they had asked, one of the lake committee members had asked to be included in the study was the number of current part-time residents, what they contribute to the school district right now with their property taxes. And as the lake gets more healthy, the committee members said, then we would see that number go up. And I know your students at one point had actually given me a number.
Yeah, I'm looking for the number. That's what I'm looking for, actually. We can get that back to you.
Yeah, I think
It's embedded here somewhere, and we'll actually add that to the PowerPoint as a slide.
Yeah, but I do think I'm not an expert.
It's a very important number.
Well,
Can you hear me?
I don't have a question, Laura. I probably have a statement. I do think when we're looking at that, we really have to understand school funding, because my understanding, and I'm with the city, so I don't totally understand school funding, but I think we really need to, if we're going to take those positions, we need to really look at that. My understanding, the school gets X dollars, and if the property tax goes up, they get less from the state. If the number of students go up, they get more from the state. So I think if we do that, look at that, we need to look at that other equation is to really look at whether or not it generates more dollars, because my understanding that's not the case.
I think the issue is with the referendum. Which is something.
Okay. I read the comment this way, and it's a dynamic question.
Committee's point was that they wanted that included.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, so you're asking me an answerable dynamic question, which is we have, going back to Dr. Doolittle, we have a push me, pull you. That as the property values go up, we get more money for the school system. But if the money simply comes in without corresponding students, the state aid may go down. Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah.
I honestly, it's kind of coming over.
Yes. Yes, that's what she said.
Easily calculable, we'll add it.
Thank you.
It's a I like that question a lot. because basically it's a curve. It's where's the sweet spot, right? what's the added revenue you get to the point where it doesn't diminish you much? And I've never really thought of it that way, that there is actually an optimal number out there. Because the revenue is going to go up and go up, and then you're going to hit a point, and then suddenly it's going to start going down, and you're like, darn it, what just happened?
That has nothing to do with residents using the lake. That is an internal micro indicator of how the schools maximize their income by limiting the increase in state property tax.
Did you
Right.
hear- Yeah, okay.
It has nothing to do with this.
No, but it's worth taking a peek at.
Yeah, no question. It has nothing to do with improving the economic impact of the quality of the lake.
Correct, but I'm, the increasing the quality of the lake is intended to drive the incremental spend of the people who spend extra days at the lake.
Right. And property
The extra days they spend in restaurants, in businesses, in the region, and and a lot of it's driven by restaurants. It's not driven by machine shops. But the spillover benefit, the induced and the indirect, comes back to those areas such as hospitals and clinics and those people who benefit. But I do think it's worth taking a peek at.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes. Is one of the indicators of spillover might be number of EMT visits to emergencies caused by the lake.
Years ago, we used to do a study called a COCS study, a COX study, cost of community services. And our concern was that as we got more people into a region, that it would increase in a linear fashion the cost of these community services, fire, and in many ways schools, because you would take the cost of the fixed cost of the service divided by n, and if you have more n's, then you multiply it back out, and you're going to say it's going to cost this much. The question for these services, whether they be police department, fire department, EMS, is what is the capacity? Do you have to expand your capacity, and where is that tipping point? And so if you have excess capacity, adding additional people doesn't necessarily increase the overall cost. And that's a community determination. I mean, I will give you the comparison. It is basically saying when we build 20 new houses in the town of Delavan, and we're going to add 40 more students because the parents have 2 children, does the school have to expand the size of the schools, or do they have the capacity to absorb 40 new students? Does EMS have the capacity to absorb more emergencies? Because the people are staying longer, and there may be a possibility that they will have accidents, they will have emergencies. I'm not sure about that. I do know that in the case of the town of Delavan, you have at least last year you had a volunteer EMS program. And then what is the ability of them to expand their services with more people coming more often to town? That's my answer.
So in your study, you did not have indicators of public use requirements.
We assume you're on the elastic side of the curve.
All right, thanks.
All right,
What is the economic performance or income from the service industry in the area? People that have homes here, that have landscaping, property, what's the electric company that has to be able, as well as other service industries that take care of homes. So people that are here on a part-time basis.
did you hear that question, Ross?
No, not at all. Catherine, can you repeat it or?
What's the economic impact from the service industry in the local area here? People have homes, they have landscapers, they have remodeling done, painting done, they have heating and air conditioning services and things like that. What's that impact to the economy?
That's in the analysis. We can actually tease it out and include it. But each of those questions were asked within the survey. And basically when we asked about remodeling, and we asked how much you spend, we divided by 30 because we assume this is a long-term capital. A lot of times people will answer that question with I spent $100,000. Well, they're not spending $100,000 a year. And so we reduce that number because we're worried about outliers. But in terms of landscaping, in terms of remodeling, it's included in the analysis.
All right, my question?
Catherine, I actually wanted to see if were there any surprises that people felt in what we came back with, something that, as residents and people in the area, that among the findings, was there anything that jumped out at them that we can build on?
Yeah, hold on one second.
Is there any way to measure return on investment? So if $1 million was invested in cleaning up the lake, what income would come back in return on that investment?
Yes. The ROI would, if it's a government spend, the ROI is the tax revenue raised. And if we look at what would be the outcome of this investment, Lake Lawn's an example. What is the ROI on the investment in Lake Lawn's development in the long run? When do you break even? And so what we would need to be able to do that is a for instance. For instance, you were looking to do X, Y, and Z, build a pavilion, build a gazebo. And how many times is that going to be rented out? What is the operating cost? And when does this investment net out? What's the ROI immediately? And then for me, being from Wisconsin, when do I get all my money back?
I think also with that question, we're talking about if we invest $1 million in dredging. So if we were to invest all this money in the dredging project and the lake then is cleaner, what's the economic impact on that? Is that where you were going with the question? Was more like actual
Yes.
best management practices for the lake, things that make the lake cleaner. What's the economic impact? Like, how do we measure that?
We know the numerator. The numerator is people visit more often. We have to know the denominator, which is how much are you looking to spend.
Let's say 1 million.
And that'll drive the ROI.
And the payback period.
And the payback period.
Russ, did you want to comment on I think you and I had the conversation about, how to advertise the lake and, like.
Well, I do have a few observations as a citizen. I grew up here. I don't know if my family owned a property on Pleasant Lake for many, many, many years. It was the old Boy Scout camp. And so I grew up in this region. And I take it very personal. Chosen and I are doing a project up in Door County currently. And we're doing a project in Delavan. And I view today as a unique opportunity to get it right. What we do in this COVID environment for the next few years, people are going to nest. They're going to vacation close to home. They're going to be, they're not. I honestly don't see people going to Europe in the near term, and so they're going to be using their lake properties more. The better we do today and in the near term, the more we grab market share. And that's, I think, the opportunity we have. One of the things that we have found is the return on investment to advertising spend, to marketing. That we've looked at the hotel room tax around the state, and we've lagged it and looked at prior to recessions, that the money you spend this year on marketing continues to pay off next year. People who retrench, pull back, and say, I'm not going to advertise because my hotel revenue, I need to preserve it, my tax revenue, in mathematically are making a critical mistake, because they're giving up the fight to the other person. The other person continues to plot forward and say, come to our community, and come to our community this year, next year, and next year. And so I encourage the two levels. Make it better, but make it known.
Hey, Ross, one of the things you're doing is you're assuming that everybody in the town of Delavan wants more people there. And that's what this is all about. To me, if I owned a place on the lake, which I don't, but if I did, I don't necessarily want more people there. I want a cleaner lake. I want to be able to go out there. I'm living on the lake. I want it to be nicer. I don't want more people in there. There's a million boats traveling around there every weekend. Is there anything in your analysis that can say what this means to the people that are living on the lake, just having nicer water out in front of them?
There's a utility issue of happiness, yes, because it's what they do. But the problem is we can't build a wall around the lake, and we can't demarcate out the people from Illinois from the people from Wisconsin, the full-time residents from the part-time residents. You clean the lake, a rising basin lifts all boats, and all the boats will show up. So in regards to that, yeah, I mean, but the challenge is the people who are part-time residents will observe this phenomenon.
Right. No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if you're not underestimating what this real value is, because it's a lot of the people who are on this lake, the people that are in the audience, they're going to go back out and see the lake regardless of they're not coming or going. Just improving the water quality is another financial benefit to them, even if it's not bringing in dollars. It's just, they'd rather, if they had their choice now, if they lived here or on Lake Geneva, which one would they rather have? If they can make their Lake Delavan look like Geneva more of the time, a cleaner lake, what is that value? What is that dollar value to them?
Yeah, we didn't do that predominantly because we didn't survey the full-time residents. We surveyed the part-time residents. And the full-time residents, we would assume that their spend is their spend. And it's an economic analysis in the long run. And so in terms of quantifying their utility or their level of happiness, it's a possibility, but that's not really part and parcel of what we're doing here. But you are correct. I mean, at the end of the day, who are we really servicing? I mean, let's be clear. It's the residents of the lake, and in many cases, it's the full-time citizens of the town of Delavan. And they deserve to be happier also.
Russ, I had another question. I was involved with this study and your last study on the lake. Is there any way to put the two together? I'm back to hear about looking at incremental change, because no matter what we do to the lake, it's not going to go from this to a swimming pool, almost your zebra mussel idea. It's going to improve a little bit, and it'll be gradual and all that kind of thing. Is there a way to take these two studies, put them together and say, if we increase, actually it's pronounced Secchi disc, if you improve the water clarity, which is Secchi, if you improve the water clarity by a little bit, is there a way to take that last study, mix it with this study and say, if we improve the water clarity by this much, it'll mean this much to the, you know, to the financial, economic value of the lake?
That's why we do the literature review, because that's real boots on the ground. That's basically sending students, and you know, and this is done where you send the students out to basically interview people directly and show them, you know, stand there with the mirror and say, you know, how much do you value this, and how much more can you get for the extra foot of clarity? Keep it up. Yeah, it's possible to do this. We've done the challenge I have is that this is done over and over and over again. It's common in the state of Maine. The researchers in Maine love doing this stuff, and they find that there's an incremental value. It isn't the lake is dirty, the lake is clean. It's the lake is cleaner. And they talk about this incremental value. And it's actually in the report. That cleaner is better. But cleanest costs a lot of money. And the other thing with the other report that I will say proudly, because those reports, I mean, one of that part of that report got published in one of the leading water journals in the world. It's one of the most cited papers I've ever written. Hedonic analysis in there basically set it up into different time frames. This back in the 1990s, before the major work was done on the lake, and then subsequent to the 1990s. And there was a significant change in the property values. The challenge now is, do you revisit that? And I can ask the crowd. I mean, who was it that asked me that question?
Dale Robertson from USGS.
Oh yeah, Dale. Yeah, I got your picture up there. I guess the question for Dale is, how much has the water quality degraded in the last 15 years since I did the first study? Or is it basically baselined?
It's actually improved a little bit.
Oh, good.
If you look at the 20 years, if you look at the last maybe 7 or 8, it's probably gotten a little bit worse. Now, if you go back to about 1990, then it's gone down quite a bit. But that was trying to get down to this sort of a new equilibrium kind of phase, the way I look at it. So it's gone through. You know, I could give a whole talk on it, but it was really good around 1990. Then it got a little worse, and then it improved. And now we see a little bit on the edge of degrading again. And that's where, you know, I was looking at this in terms of how much is it worth to go back to, you know, sort of this where it was 5-6 years ago. What's it worth to go all the way back to a swimming pool? And that's why I think trying to tie these two studies together is really important. I understand that this shows the benefit of not only to Delavan, but to Elkhorn, Geneva, and all these other areas, and how this really is important to the whole greater community. But it's hard to, I'm looking at this in terms of maybe there should be new goals for the lake. And one of those goals could be based on an economic value, saying, well, if we can improve the water clarity by 1 meter, 3 feet, what would that mean to the area? And you're showing that it means improved water quality means something to every one of these communities around here. But it's just how much, you know, it's back to what you're talking about, bang for the buck. And how much can you get if you were to improve it by 3 feet versus if you really, really put lots and lots of money into it and you brought it back and improved it 6 feet or something. And so I was trying to get this in terms of looking at where they are today and what kind of goals they should be trying to get to for the lake, both for the people around the lake, but also for the economy.
The goal in 2005, when we first did the study, was a kick in the pants. It was a kick in the pants of don't, and it obviously worked. The kick in the pants was don't let it degrade. You did all this work in the 90s to improve the quality. And you could see the impact, especially in the property values, because in many cases, it's the largest asset that people in town of Delavan have is their lake property. And it was, and the new kick in the pants is try and raise the quality a little bit. I can actually, we'll add an addendum on that, because that is actually, if you go back to the original study, that's actually about 7 pages in the original study is all about that, about the incremental value of an inch of water. What is the value of this inch or foot of clarity? But we can add that to this report and talk about marginal value of cleaning it.
I think that'd be great.
Thank you, Russ. We have another question.
Yeah, did you ask a question about people's future planning to their part-time residents? What is their goal to possibly become full-time residents? In the original studies, that question was on it. And the reply of those that said yes, they intend to become a full-time resident is about 30%. But I felt also interesting as being someone that's interested in 5, 10, 15, 20 years of planning what our town could look like. The increment of time in the next year, in 5 years, in 10 years, the biggest number of those that intend to become residents was in the 1 to 5 years. And I think that's something good to know, because that figure was 163 respondents said they would retire here as a full-time resident. That changes the time.
Did you hear that question, Russ?
No, I didn't. Can you, I apologize.
The question is, in your last study, you asked the part-time residents if they would be becoming full-time residents.
Yes.
So like if they plan to retire here and become a full-time resident, and there was a significant amount of people who said, yes, they plan to do that in the next 1 to 5 years. And was there a component like that this?
Yeah, we did. I can't tell you what the answer is. I have the data in front of me, so I'd have to, yeah, we do actually have that question. But I have to find the code book. But we can get you that answer, because there were a good number of people who said they plan on retiring to their lake home.
All right, great, thank you. Are you able to email us, since you weren't able to come in person, the study so we can get it to everyone here?
Certainly.
Thank you.
And they're welcome to, like everything else, they're welcome to call me also. I love to talk about our work. I mean, I love the work that we do, and people want to call me and talk to me personally about this. This is fine. I'm sheltered at home, and so I'm happy to go over if you have, and if people want me to parse out other data, I'm going to send the original data to Kathleen Catherine to get her access to it, because it's your data. Let's be blunt. And so if you look through the data, but obviously I analyze the data. If you look at it and say, oh, this other question, we want that parsed out. That's fine. None of this gives me blisters.
Cat, okay. Catherine, I'm just going to summarize some of the things I heard. So just to make sure that we kind of tease that out and get you the data. I think there were some questions on the part-time resident taxes, the school contribution, we'll pull that out. City versus the town, quality of the lake, earlier study versus the current study, the conversation we just had about the incremental, the clarity and the cleaner part of the lake, we pull that out. ROI and payback period. Russ talked about the addendum, which is the incremental value of the water stuff. We'll the marginal value, we can add that. There was a question there, and I'll talk to Russ about this later on and see how we can get to this, is this happiness kind of a component of the full-time residents and whether they are looking forward to having more people show up. So that's something we can look into and see, if there's anything we can kind of provide some insights.
Yeah.
That's what I have. Did I miss any big ones?
Is that all right, everyone here and on the phone?
Who asked a question about the, I have to ask this, who asked a question about the part-time residents and the full-time residents?
Mary Nipper, Supervisor Nipper.
Oh, hi, Mary. Yeah, you made me think about Yogi Berra and his famous quote that no one goes to this certain nightclub anymore because it's too crowded. It's a heck of a balancing act. And so I thought of that when you asked that question.
All right.
I have
Well,
a lake property up in Ephraim, by the way, in Door County.
Wrong light. You need to come down here.
I know.
all right. Well, thank you, Russ and Chotan. Any other questions? Thank you so much to all of you who came out today. If you have registered online, I have your email address. I tried writing all of you down as you came in. So I will get you the report from them when they email it to me. So if you have any additional questions, please let us know if there's additional information you want really teased out as we finalize this report. But thank you again for your interest and support of the lake. We appreciate it. Russ, are you going to put on the screen your contact information?
I can get it from you.
All right, I'll include Russ's contact information in the email. And if you don't get it, let me know. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.